The moment Layla woke up, she knew something was wrong. The night before, she had only glanced at the old painting her grandmother had left her, just a brief look before shutting the door to the attic. But now, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. Her every move was being tracked by an eye she couldn't see, but could certainly feel. And when she turned her head to glance at the dark corner of the room, she wished she hadn't. Before we dive into this chilling tale, make sure to subscribe to our channel, hit the like button, and share this story with your friends. It helps us create more eerie content just for you. Now brace yourself as we unravel the mystery behind the eye that never closes. Layla had inherited her grandmother's house unexpectedly. It was an old Victorian-style mansion, creaky and full of shadows, standing isolated on the edge of a dense forest. It had been abandoned for years after her grandmother's sudden disappearance. The townspeople whispered stories about the house, calling it the House of the Unseen Eye. Layla had always dismissed these stories as mere folklore, until now. As she explored the house, she found herself drawn to the attic, where she discovered a painting she had never seen before. It was covered with a dusty cloth, as if someone wanted to hide it from the world. With a hesitant tug, she unveiled the painting. It was an eerie portrait of a woman with a single, large eye at the center of her face. The eye seemed disturbingly real, almost as if it were alive. Suddenly, a cold breeze swept through the attic, making Layla shiver. The eye in the painting appeared to glint, catching the dim light as if it blinked. Layla laughed nervously, convincing herself it was just a trick of the light. But as she covered the painting and turned to leave, she couldn't shake the feeling that the eye was watching her every step. That night, Layla had trouble sleeping. She kept waking up to the sensation of being watched. Every time she opened her eyes, the feeling intensified. It felt as though a pair of invisible eyes were boring into her, observing her every breath. She dismissed it as paranoia. She was just spooked by the house, she thought. The next morning, she found herself back in the attic, staring at the covered painting. Her fingers trembled as she pulled away the cloth again. The eye in the portrait seemed larger now, more vivid. It was as if it had changed overnight. The iris was a deep, haunting shade of blue, swirling like a stormy sea. Layla stumbled back, knocking over a stack of old books. "Is it my imagination, or is it really moving?" she muttered, her voice shaking. The day passed uneventfully, but as night fell, the sensation of being watched returned, stronger than ever. Layla found herself glancing over her shoulder constantly. When she finally decided to go to bed, she was too restless to sleep. Every creak of the floorboards, every rustle of the wind seemed amplified. At around 3 a.m., she heard a distinct whisper, soft yet unmistakable. "I see you." Layla's heart raced. She bolted upright in her bed, her eyes darting across the dark room. The whisper came again, clearer this time. "I am watching." It seemed to come from the direction of the attic. Summoning every ounce of courage, she grabbed a flashlight and headed up to the attic. Her hands trembled as she pushed open the door. The air was colder here, almost icy. She approached the painting slowly, her flashlight beam illuminating the single eye, which now appeared wide open, staring directly at her. "It can't be real," she whispered. "It's just a painting." But as she stared at it, the eye seemed to follow her movements. She stepped left, then right, and the eye tracked her every move. Panic surged through her, but she couldn't look away. Then she noticed something she hadn't seen before. At the bottom corner of the painting was a small brass plaque. It read, "The Eye That Never Closes." Suddenly, Layla felt a searing pain behind her own eyes. She screamed and fell to the ground, clutching her head. It felt like her own eyes were being pried open, forced to stare into a dark void. When she managed to look back up, the eye in the painting was no longer painted. It was protruding, a real, blinking eye, bloodshot and wet. "Help me," it whispered. Layla scrambled to her feet, backing away from the painting. "What are you?" she screamed. "I see everything. I am trapped. Free me or become my prisoner." The voice echoed in her mind, not through her ears. Her breath came in shallow gasps. She grabbed the cloth and threw it over the painting, but the whispers didn't stop. They grew louder, overlapping, hundreds of voices crying out, "Look at me! Set me free! Don't close your eyes!" Layla sprinted out of the attic, slamming the door behind her. She ran downstairs and locked herself in her room, her heart pounding in her chest. But the voices followed her. No matter how hard she pressed her hands to her ears, she could still hear them. Exhausted, she collapsed onto her bed. The whispers faded away, leaving an eerie silence. Just as she began to drift off to sleep, she felt a cold, wet touch on her cheek. Her eyes flew open, and there, inches from her face, was the eye from the painting, floating in the darkness. It blinked once, then whispered, "You looked too long. Now I see through you." The pain behind her eyes returned, unbearable this time. Layla screamed, but no sound came out. The room spun around her, and everything went black. When the police found Layla days later, she was sitting in her room, her eyes wide open, bloodshot, and staring blankly at the wall. She wouldn't blink. She wouldn't move. And on the attic floor, the painting lay discarded, its canvas now empty, except for a single painted tear. As the camera zooms out from the chilling final scene, a shadow flickers across the screen, revealing a faint, whispering sound. "I see you too." If you enjoyed this story and want more spine-chilling tales, make sure to subscribe, hit that like button, and share it with friends who love a good scare. Remember, the eye is always watching.